Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Stephanie York, your host today. Thank you for joining us for a global outlook with a local view. Today we are here with Dave Lieberth, one of the most recognized individuals in Akron. I might even say Summit County. Dave's career has been multifaceted as a broadcast journalist, lawyer, civic leader, and deputy mayor of Akron. But what Dave is really known for is being a walking history book for the community. Dave has been part of several monumental projects to preserve this community's history, including the development of an endowment for the Historical Society, writing 3 books of Akron history, and producing 2 television documentaries for Western Reserve Public Media. Now, Dave has taken his passion for Akron's history and helped create the Akron History Museum, which is set to open in November, so coming up really soon. Thank you, Dave, for joining us today.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, always. So we're here to talk about several things, but the upcoming opening of the Akron History Center. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how we got to this place?
I joined the Summit County Historical Society when I was a junior in high school. So I've been a member of that society for 52 years. I think I am the longest serving member, in fact.
I think so.
So when I worked for the mayor's office and left there in 2012, I knew that the bicentennial of Akron would be coming up in just 13 short years, and here it is. The one thing that we had done at the Historical Society 40 years ago, in 1983 and 84, was the idea that we should develop a comprehensive museum about Akron's history. Not just rubber, but also all the other industrial kind of significance that Akron has, plus the social service history that we have. And so that resulted in the development of a plan, and it sat on a shelf until the Inventors Hall of Fame came to town. And then when I left the mayor's office, I thought, if we're ever going to do this comprehensive history center, it's going to have to happen during our bicentennial year. So we began planning for the Akron History Center about 5 years ago, and now it's ready to open in just a couple of months.
Incredible. So I gotta know, are you from Akron?
Well, I was born in Barberton, happy to say. I went to St. Vincent High School, so back when it was St. Vincent's and not St. Vincent St. Mary, pre-LeBron days. I went to the University of Akron, was involved in student broadcasting, had a 10-year career as a broadcast journalist, both on radio and TV, some of that with Western Reserve Public Media. And then I went to law school during that time and practiced law for 25 years. Before joining the mayor's office as Mayor Pasquale's chief of staff and deputy mayor.
Unbelievable. Seriously.
It's believable. You have to believe it. It's the truth.
I know. I do believe it because I've been with you for part of that journey. But I just the broadcasting to lawyer to it's a little unconventional, I would say.
Okay, unconventional. I'll accept that.
Okay, good. So you've become Akron's unofficial or official historian.
It's a low-paid position.
Right.
It's not very financially remunerative being the Akron historian.
So this has to be a labor of love.
It is absolutely a passion that I've had for 50-some years, and it gives me the opportunity to do the things I like best. So I've worked for the last 40 years to have a full-time volunteer job, and I'm happy to do it.
That's awesome. We're happy that you're doing it. So I'd like to talk a little bit, like we go back to Akron's history. Are we talking back when the Native Americans were?
Well, the Akron
here,
History Center actually begins before that. It begins in the Pleistocene era when we have an exhibit about the sandstone underpinnings of the city and talking about how many of our earliest buildings, some still in there today, are built of the sandstone that was laid down by the oceans that covered this part of the world. We do have an exhibit about the indigenous people who lived here, a history that's poorly told in the past. And just now, through the fact that we now have science That is that we have archaeology and anthropology. We have the digital universe that allows us to have more facts available at our fingertips than we've ever had before. So one of the artifacts that we'll show in that exhibit is a point that was actually found by an amateur archaeologist on the grounds of Stanhewood Hall about 100 years ago. And it's a point that is right on the portage path. And so because we've had it reproduced accurately with a 3D printer, it is a reproduction that kids can touch and feel and see and know what it is. And then we go into the founding of Akron in 1825 by Simon Perkins, the development of the Western Reserve, the fact that the Perkins family contributed so much during Akron's 19th century. But we talk about those early days of the city, and then on the first level of the Akron History Center, we conclude with an exhibit about John Brown and Sojourner Truth and the kind of march that Akron has had for almost 175 years towards equality and justice for all.
Wow, how do you fit it all in this museum?
That's a good question. We don't. And,
okay.
And the fact is we got about 200 pounds of history, and we have a 100-pound bag to put it in.
Sure.
And so that means that a lot of the history of Akron as part of the center will spill over to a website that will be comprehensive and will relate directly to the exhibits that people can touch, feel, and see, and hear. And then if they want to know more, they'll go to our website to find out more about it.
So tell us how this all came about. Where is this located? How did you find a location? Who's all involved?
Well, when I left the mayor's office in 2012, I really started looking then for a possible site. I had directed the Akron Centiseptuagenary in the year 2000, our 175th anniversary. And so we had sort of known at that time that if we were going to have this history center, it would have to happen now. I worked with the Akron Public Schools to determine whether or not the Inventors Hall of Fame building might host it. I worked with the owners of Canal Place to see whether they might host it. I talked with the Akron Summit County Public Library to see if they might host it, because as much as we all love books, the digital age has opened up space at the library
Sure.
for perhaps other things. Those conversations eventually led to the developer of the Bowery project in downtown Akron, Don Taylor of Welty Building Company, who identified this building at 172 South Main Street that really isn't equipped for retail in any way. It's not permitted, in fact, to have retail as part of the funding package. So he asked me whether or not I had any ideas, and I was able to say, yeah, I've got a plan here. It's 40 years old, but it's still the plan for building out this 200-year look back at the city's history. And so that's how it began. We're part of the Bowery project, 2 doors north of the Akron Civic Theater.
Okay.
And so we're located in that block adjacent to Lock 3. Our back door goes right out onto Lock 4. And so we're part of the downtown community now.
It's right in the hub of everything.
It is at the center, at the northern tip of the towpath that will extend down to Summit Lake, and a part of all of the work that's been done by the Ohio and Erie Canalway and the Knight Foundation. For that, we're at the northern edge of all of that development.
So in doing your research for this museum and everything that's going in it, are there any surprises along the way?
I think that I would tell you I'm a student of Akron history, meaning that I learn every day, including today. I was editing a manuscript today for a book that we'll be publishing as part of the bicentennial, and I learned all kinds of new things I had not known before. So every day is kind of an adventure. I'm constantly learning about new aspects of Akron history. The first floor is intended to be that founding area, the early history. The second level is called Boomtown, and it's really the history of Akron's industrial progress with the rubber industry, with clay products, with
Sure.
the cereal industry, but also the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous, the founding of the labor movement in Akron, the United Rubber Workers Union. And the Main Street level will be more contemporary innovation. Goodyear will have a strong presence on that Main Street level with a NASCAR tire made in Akron that kids will be able not just to look at, touch, and feel, but also there will be a new game that we've created for kids to be able to race virtually on Goodyear tires to find out what kind of choices they might make for the size of the racetrack, the weather conditions, and so forth. And Gojo is represented by a nice little artifact that the founder's nephew has provided to us, Joe Canfor, and it's one of the original canisters that was machined by Jerry Lippman when he founded the Gojo company in 1949. So we're able to have artifacts that people can touch and feel and see, that take them back into those times, and also some very contemporary stuff, like 34 different flat screens, which will have videos on them throughout the 3 floors.
It sounds like there's something for everybody there.
Yeah, and I think that the one other thing that we're happy to have is that we've acquired the collection of the Akron Sound Museum, meaning that we also have on the Main Street level a display about the history of, we call it the rhythms of the Rubber City, going all the way back to the 19th century when the Tuesday Musical Association was formed, and through that very important period of time from about 1979 to about 1983 or 4, when we had that Akron Sound with Devo and Tin Huey and all of those groups that were formed and became nationally recognized. And of course the Black Keys sort of wrap up that period of time for us right up to the modern day.
Chrissie Hynde in there?
Chrissie Hynde's in there, James Ingram,
Awesome.
Ruby and the Romantics, Howard Hewitt, yeah, lots of people.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. And I think that's one of the points of the Akron History Center. People don't realize how important Akron has been for a city of our size. We've had really a disproportionate amount of success and accomplishments for such a town that right now is fewer than 200,000 people.
I always say we swing above our weight.
We do. I say we punch above our weight.
Well, yeah,
anyhow,
that's
swing or
probably better.
punch.
Swing, punch.
Yeah, we
I
can
always
do either
mix
one.
my things anyway. It's a malaprop or whatever they call it. I do it all the time. Why should others care about Akron's history?
You know, one of my inspirational heroes is the author John Meacham. And John Meacham wrote the book most recently, The Soul of America, but he also wrote he's written many books, historical volumes, and has been very involved in politics recently. But one of the things he says is that we need to avoid what he calls the tyranny of the present. That feeling that somehow our problems are so vast, so great, so intricate, so complicated, that we will never be able to solve them. When in fact, a study of history will show that people in the past had similar problems, had similar issues, had similar complications, and were able to overcome them. And so the study of history, local history or national history, tends to give us perspective. And it's that perspective which can give us positivity at a time like today when there's great negativity and abundance.
Yeah, there really is. I would like to remind our viewers and those who may have joined late that we are here with Dave Lieberth, one of the driving forces around the creation of the Akron History Museum. We are learning how it was created, when it will be open to the public, and some of the lessons that can be learned from our rich history. Give me one of those lessons we can learn from our rich history.
You know, people often say today that we are so divided as a nation. And yet in 1968, in my lifetime, we were extremely divided as a nation because of the Vietnam War, because the fact that civil rights was on the ascendancy, dividing an awful lot of people. And we overcame a lot of that. In Akron, we saw riots on Worcester Avenue, for example, in July of 1968. We were able to overcome that with progress, the development of a series in the Beacon Journal called A Question of Color, which led to a community conversation. It's one that we're still having today. One of the features of the Akron History Center will be that we have 2 stairwells between the 2nd and 3rd levels. And on each of those stairwells, we have 20 steps. And what we have are 20 steps to social justice. So the steps are actually labeled with an event or a moment in history that shows how Akron has progressed from a day when Sojourner Truth gave her Ain't I a Woman speech all the way up to the gay games as a progress not just in racial equality, but in accepting diversity in our community and in our neighborhood of all kinds. And so I think that's one of the lessons that we learn, is that while we were known as the rubber capital of the world, here the largest self-help organization the world has ever known was founded at the Stanleywood Gate Lodge in May of 1935. Most people don't realize that we talk about victims of crime and the horror involved in that, but the development of victim advocacy was really founded by Reverend Bob Denton in Akron and 45 years ago. And so we try to highlight those things with AA, victim assistance, the development of organizations that promote racial and gender equality. So Akron is a welcoming community. And the story of immigration is one that will be told as well. Not just the black migration of the early 20th century, but the European migration and the Appalachian migration that really changed the character of Akron and made it the city that it is today.
I like those steps to social justice, 20 steps on each one. It's not always a progression up, though, is it? There's always sometimes there's a couple steps back, and then...
And ours isn't either. You're absolutely right. You sometimes take 2 steps back for 1 step forward, or 2 steps forward for 1 step back,
right.
I guess is what I mean to say. And yeah, that's true. In 1900, in that very block where the Akron History Center is located, in August of 1900, there was a riot based upon the fact that a black man had been charged with the assault of a white girl. A mob gathered. They were going to lynch him in downtown Akron.
Oh my gosh.
And they burned this Akron City Hall to the ground. The National Guard was called in. They quelled the disturbance. And 12 years later, the man who had been charged with a crime was pardoned by the governor because there was a complete lack of evidence that he was responsible. Those kinds of things are meaningful because as we look back, it shows us that some of the controversies we're dealing with today are no greater than the ones that existed in the past, and we found solutions, we found ways to progress.
Well, thinking about that, you're a respected community leader. I can say that, I've heard it, you just are. What do you think is the biggest issue facing the Akron community today?
Well, I think we face the same issues that all cities do.
Sure.
And on a micro level, we have about 1 million square feet of empty commercial office space right now in the city. And so just like Cleveland, Columbus, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, we're in the process of a transition of working in a central city to working at home. How do we manage that commercial space? How do we manage that abundance of debt that goes with it? That's a problem that we're going to have to face. But I think that the problems that we face are human problems, and because we've created those human problems, we can also create the solutions for them. And I see lots of younger people particularly interested and involved in making a difference. And so with programs like Leadership Akron, for example, the Love Network that DuBois Kemp manages, the work that's being done at the United Way, all of those organizations are working together collaboratively, and Akron may be the most collaborative city in the country, prove me wrong, that we can find solutions for those problems. And there's never not going to be problems. It's just that in a city today of fewer than 200,000 people, we have all the same problems that big cities do, but we can also embrace the fact that the solutions are out there waiting to be found and for us to find ways to manage them.
I think some of those solutions might be found in the Akron History Museum. If we look at our history.
Well, some of them might be. You're absolutely right. The story of innovation is a continuous thread from the time that Ferdinand Schumacher created the first brand of oatmeal after the American Civil War, right up to today's Elevate Akron campaign initiative to draw together companies that all have a polymer background in manufacturing or research.
Yep. So you've written a few books.
I have.
Let's talk about those.
They're not very interesting. There's not much to talk about, because one of the books that I've written really has to do with the history of the Akron Roundtable, for example.
Sure.
Another has to do with the history of the Sisler McFawn Foundation. Those are very narrow types of subject matters.
Sure.
The book that I wrote for the city and the Greater Akron Chamber, Inventive, Industrious, Inspired, is really the story of Akron over the last 30 years. And it talks about the fact of how the city has changed from the days of being the rubber capital to what it is today, a center of innovation, not just in polymer materials, but in information technology, which we've had a long history in, which is very much unknown to most people, which we talk about in the Akron History Center. And all of this are things to celebrate, and that's what the Akron Bicentennial is about. So we have
That's coming up. Let's talk about it.
We have a Bicentennial Commission that was appointed by the mayor in 2022. We have another meeting coming up here in just a couple of weeks. And the commission has created a new corporation called Akron 200. It has hired a full-time executive director, Mark Greer. And so plans are underway now for a whole series of events and activities and celebrations. The first one starting in December of this year on the beginning of Akron's 200th year. That'll happen at the Akron Civic Theater right through December 6th, 2025, which will be the actual 200th anniversary of the founding of the city.
Very cool. And I believe they're going to be at different locations, like events everywhere.
Every neighborhood will be involved. Akron
Good.
has 24 neighborhoods, and every one of them will have some activity within the neighborhood commemorating those 200 years with a major celebration in downtown Akron from July 1st through July 6th of 2025, including, hopefully, the largest parade that Akron has seen since its sesquicentennial in 1975, 50 years ago.
Wow. You practice saying those centennial names?
Yeah, I do. I get up in the morning and I practice centennial, sesquicentennial, quasquicentennial,
Yeah.
centeseptuagenary, yeah.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, what's the one thing you would add to the museum that it does not have?
More space.
Yeah.
We are limited in space. We've managed to complete planning for 200 years of history within the space that we have available. So although everybody would like to have more of everything,
Sure.
more money, more space, more
sure.
time, more resources, I think that people will be pleasantly surprised that when they enter the Akron History Center, there are 3 floors, 3,000 square feet of space, while compact. It'll have very meaningful exhibits and will tell that story of 200 years as to why we should celebrate and why we are celebrating.
Is this museum going to be open to the public? Is there a charge? Is there a gift shop with your books in there? Like, what's going on?
The museum will be free admission.
Very nice.
And it will be operated by the Akron Summit County Public Library.
Oh, nice.
We knew that the Summit County Historical Society, operating the Simon Perkins Stone Mansion and the John Brown House, would not have had the capacity to extend itself into operating a full-time downtown operation. But the library actually has always been involved in local history. It's a great resource. Its special collections division house amazing amount of artifacts, including all the two-dimensional artifacts of the Historical Society's collection. And so we're pleased and really thrilled that the Akron Summit County Public Library will be the operating agency for the Akron History Center going forward into the future.
That's great. Will there be a big opening for this?
Well,
or ribbon cutting? Or
I don't know. We haven't planned that yet, but
it's coming up.
Yeah, we have time. But hopefully we'll have more details the weekend. It'll be the weekend prior to Thanksgiving when there's so much activity in downtown Akron. We want to be able to have a place this holiday season where people who are visiting from out of town, visiting families, can have a place to go to see, what Akron is all about.
So, who's going to take over the history of Akron moving forward after this?
One of the things that has emerged from our work with the Bicentennial Commission has been an enormous amount of energy and excitement by younger people. And so I'm really happy to see a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s in particular, who've wanted to be part of the bicentennial planning, who've wanted to join the board of the Akron History Center. And so I'm happy to say that there are people out there who are going to be able to pick up the baton, as it were, in this Olympic week and finish the race.
Well, I'm glad to hear that too. I'm looking forward to all the activities coming up. One last thing, when you wake up every morning, what's the one thing you look forward to doing the most?
Going to bed that night, getting more sleep, I suppose. I mean, I have a family, I have 4 grandchildren. Obviously, they are a priority. But in terms of the community, and to probably the point of your question, is that I really look forward to making certain that people know what a unique community Akron has been, how we have been the little engine that could, how we still are, in some regards, the little engine that could. We punch above our weight. Yep. We've been driving an industrial expansion over 200 years that is really second to none in the United States. Plus, the history of our local social service organizations presents really meaningful contributions, not just locally, but nationally as well.
Incredible, incredible work you've done. Thank you, Dave, for the interesting and very brief discussion of the upcoming Akron History Museum. As Summit County's historian, Akron's historian, we are so glad you could join us today. I certainly learned a lot, as I always do when I'm with you, and I look forward to our viewers learning a lot by going to the Akron History Museum.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. I'm Stephanie York. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.